the largest generation, 20% of the world's or the US population, right? The strongest, the most powerful, the wealth creators, they are retiring. In fact, they will
Yeah.
be out by 2029. The peak of the retirements is 2029.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hey, welcome back to the show. Your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, I got Casey Minshew. Casey, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me today, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you joining us. And Casey is an accomplished entrepreneur. He's got over 20 years of experience in energy, real estate, startups, and structured finance. Back in 2019, Casey sold Energy Funders to a public company. And he also completed a solo acquisition of Double H Services. And Casey is currently the managing partner at Equity Launchpad, and is responsible for searching and acquiring solid companies with good growth stories. So, Casey, welcome to the show. Give our listeners a bit more, maybe about your background and what you're doing today.
Yeah, man. No, thank you. And I've just been, and probably like you, Todd, you're an entrepreneur, and you just somehow your whole life seems to be that you're an entrepreneur. And as a kid, I always had the lawn business and sold something and did something. And then in a career, when I went to college and realized that, nothing against college, I got an accounting degree, but I just realized, they're training me to be an employee. And it all kind of came to light. And I'm not really good with authority. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's innate. If you, I work hard, I do the right things, but if you tell me what to do, I like shut down.
I think
And
that's an
so I knew,
entrepreneurial, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse, but I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs.
yeah. And you just kind of stumble along and you find your way. And so I got, the first thing I thought about was starting my own business right out of school. And just time and time again, probably through my 20s and 30s, I failed forward. Every little opportunity got a little better. And then, probably in my 40s, I started to connect some dots. I'm definitely not the brightest guy in the room, but I'm pretty creative and I'm pretty tenacious. So I'll continue to connect those dots. And so, that got me into the M&A side. I looked at, I had a conversation with a gentleman uh, probably about 15 years ago. And I asked him, I said, a friend of my dad's, he had sold his company, worked out of private equity, and he told me about his job. And I said, well, so what do I need to do? He said, well, you need to build a company and you need to go through a merger. You need to sell it. And he goes, and then you'll understand how to talk to people about it. And maybe that's the right way or the wrong way. I don't know. But I just took his path. And it took me some time to sell Energy Funders, to start that company, to get that off the ground with my partners and to really create that. And then to go out and buy a company, and then to come to a group like, like with my partners, very prestigious group, and to be able to have a story to them to back us. So it all just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, love it, love it. Tenacity, and not giving. I love how you said you failed forward. Uh, a lot of business owners fail, but the ones who are successful are the ones who just continue to fail forward, right? You see plenty come and go, but the ones that last, that they're learning from their mistakes. They're learning from the lessons that come along the way, but they don't give up, right? They just continue to push on and say, okay, I can learn from what I did wrong, and I can build, and I can grow, and I can become better. So it sounds like you did that plenty of times.
Yeah, and before these podcasts, right, where people could listen and hear other
Yeah,
people's stories, right? We had Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, all those guys. I mean, I just my 20s and 30s were obsessed with listening to,
yeah,
tapes, audios, and reading books.
yeah.
And
Anything
and
you can get your
now,
hands on, right?
yeah, anything. And now you podcast, so someone can relate to me and the next person on here, if on your show. So it's pretty incredible,
Yeah,
to be able to learn and listen what other people have to go through. But I found one commonality, and from everybody, and which is never give up. And we cannot predict the time or the timing when we have this moment we consider ourselves success. But the one thing I do know is that is you just never give up. That is a common thread from every book I've ever read or any person I've ever met that's hit that monumental success. It's like, man, I was just stubborn enough to keep driving and going forward.
Yeah, stubborn enough. Sometimes it's naive enough. Whatever it is, it's I don't know. You're just there has to be a lack of. You're still going to be fearful, but there you have to be able to work past that. Yeah, I don't know what the word for it is, or the recipe is. Maybe you do, but it's like you said. You can never give up. You got to keep on pushing on.
Sure. And the other part of it and this is something I learned relatively young. So I actually did some direct sales network marketing back in my early 20s. And one of the things about that industry is that, and even Kiyosaki's talked a lot about the direct sales MLM industry is, it is an incredible educational training ground
Yeah.
that someone can get started in a business and for very little money, right? And I learned so much, man, because when I get into something, I'm all in. And even though I never made a ton of money or built this huge fortune, I started to really learn about personal development. One of the things one of the guys said back in the day, and this I was probably 25, 26, he said, our problem is we all have a dream, we plant the seed, and then we spend the next 90 to 120 days digging up the seed, questioning it, all those good things, instead of just letting the seed do what it's supposed to do, because if you plant it, it's going to grow. And that faith, that like faith has taken many, I mean, 2 decades for me to even get to the point where I can actually now I start to understand, like, holy crap. If I could have just gathered that at a younger age, that really it just not to dig it up, not to worry about it. Just go to work. Don't worry about the outcomes. I spent a lot of time with my daughter, who's a competitive golfer, and she's 16. And, you know, it's really tough because that's a game, a sport where you're out on the course and it's you. You can't blame your teammate. You can't do this. You can't do that. But if you get stuck and you putt it and then you go, oh, my putt didn't work, and you get frustrated, the rest of your day is downhill.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're smoked. So, and that helps me also learn as an adult. Like I look and I'm like, you know what, that's just how life is. If I get all frustrated about things that aren't working out or going as my plan, I'm going to be frustrated a lot, you know,
Yeah, you're just gonna be pissed off all day long, right? I mean,
all day long,
every day, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get frustrated. But you have to be able to push on beyond that. I like, the MLM, the network marketing thing. What's your thought on that?
I thought it was a phenomenal industry. I
Yeah,
felt like, it was there was a lot of there's some culture things that I wasn't crazy about, but I also met some people that are very successful in it, that are very, core values, very strong. They develop people. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed the industry. In fact, in 2004, I launched a company with my mentor and startup. It was a multi-level marketing company. It was more of an affiliate-based business called WowWe. And we were a decade ahead of what we're doing right now, video technology. We did video
mm,
email, video conferencing, video broadcasting, and we ended up having over about 70,000 affiliates worldwide.
well,
Built a pretty good running business back in those days. I was more of the protege. I was watching with my mentor at the time, but we built the customer service, we built the company, and I think that the industry can be done well. It can be done right, for the right product. And
agreed.
so, but if people take it as a low bar cost to go do a business, instead of putting $1 million into a company to buy and have to learn all these things, someone that's just getting started can get into the basic ideas of leverage, how to work with people, skill sets,
Right,
personal development, right?
right. Right. That's what I like about it. I think it's a great business, especially for somebody that's young. If you're young and you're hungry and you want to own a business and you're 20, or even if you're in college, like, I think a lot of find the right network marketing company. But I think they're great. You said it. They're great training ground, places. They mindset and what they teach you in business is fantastic. And maybe it's not a place that you're going to be long term, but that's okay. Like, I think it's a great place to start. And most of them, you need almost no money. I mean, very little money to get going with it.
Yeah, so think about this, and I know you talk a lot about real estate, but think about, okay, so the individual investors wanting to go out and buy a piece of a single family resident, right?
Yeah.
And they get a tenant and they get a renter, they go through all this process, and maybe their cash flow is $400 a month, right?
Yeah. Right.
Now they've got an asset that's being paid down, but from a cash flow standpoint, in a network marketing business, someone can join it. They can go out and get some people ordering the products, right? They can build their downline. And I think $400 or $500 a month in your first 6 months is very doable if you have a good product, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way that I looked at it. I was like, you're creating streams of income, right? And I don't know if you ever read this guy, Robert G. Allen, but Robert G.
Oh yeah.
Allen had multiple streams of income.
Yep.
By far, how I literally see a lot of things, right? And he talked about building all these different pipelines and having a distributorship of a downline of products and having real estate and buying companies. And he talked about all this stuff. And it's fun to be able to do it in your life, you know, and it's a challenge. But that industry is great. I love the people with it, and I think that can be done. And when people do it right, it can be done really well.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about Equity Launchpad. So your
Sure.
vision says at Equity Launchpad, we create opportunity to watch your legacy grow. What is Equity Launchpad? What do you guys do, and how are you creating opportunity to watch, uh, legacies grow?
Yeah, no. So really cool what's happening right now in our country. Okay, there is. Let's just talk about from like a baby boomer standpoint. The largest generation, 20% of the world's or the U.S. population, right? The strongest, the most powerful, the wealth creators. They are retiring. In fact, they will
Yeah,
be out by 2029. The peak of the retirements is 2029.
that's the
So right
peak.
now you have 10,000 baby boomers a day, 70,000 a week that are retiring. Okay. And that pace is going to continue through 2029.
Which is why I think that so many people don't talk about it, but this is a huge reason why our unemployment rate is so low, and it will continue to be this low or maybe even lower for a long time here for the next decade.
Yeah. And you've also got that 45 to 46%, somewhere around those small ranges. But 45% of the baby boomers own small business in America.
Mhm. That's a
So
big
I don't know
number.
if you grew up and
Did
you
you say
knew, you know,
did you say 45%?
45% of the small businesses are owned by by baby boomer generation.
Wow, that's a big number.
It's a big number. And so if you think about it for a second, you know, a lot of the kids that I grew up with that families had businesses and stuff, very few of them went to work for their dad or their
Yeah.
mom, right? Most of them wanted to go out and venture out. And truthfully, a lot of, you know, the baby boomer parents wanted their kids not to have to work for them, right? But now you've got a timing in the market where the kids have gone on in their own careers. You know, they're like, Dad, I'd rather just have the money than to run your business. And so you've got a lot of retiring owners that are now saying, hey, what am I going to do with my business? I have a good legacy, and how do I transition it? And so, what Equity Launchpad does is that one, being, you know, we're not Ivy League educated, nothing wrong with that, but we're not, you know, traditional private equity like the Bains of the world and stuff. You know, Ben, I, and Ferris, you know, we're from Houston, Texas. We're guys that grew up around blue collar business. And we realize, you know, how important these 20, 30, 40-year-old company legacies are. And so when we meet with owners and people that are looking to sell, you know, the number one thing we talk about is legacy, right? Is like, what do you see? Like, what do you want us to maintain? What do you want us to continue on? And surprisingly, you know, the people that we attract are the ones that are like, we love our company and we want this, we want to know that our company's here 10 years from now. And that's what we're looking for. And so that's really where we're focused on. We're focused on companies that do over 10 million in revenue. They've been in business for over 10 years. And we're looking for industries that are what we call moated, which, you know, don't have a lot of competition in that area. And we're buying in Texas. And so that's our main focus today. And so we acquired a business in 2023. That followed that piece. We're working on another one right now. So legacy is a big piece. And if you're a Texan, if you've ever been to Texas, we love our legacy and all of our stuff. So our traditions.
So, is there a specific type of business you guys are looking for and why?
Yeah, one of there's a few things I look for. Perfect scenarios. One, an owner that is not ready to retire yet. I'd say that's one of the biggest things that we look for
Hmm.
because what we don't
Why
want
would that be?
because we don't want to come in and buy the company and run the day to day. So
Got
our
it.
model is we are partnering with people that know how to operate. We bring them into the company to help us run the day to day. We are there for the transition. We're there for, a lot of those pieces, but ultimately, the seller or the guy selling the business says, hey, look, I'm good for another couple of years. I just don't have an exit strategy. Work with me. I want to take some chips off the table, and then we can work on a structure to get out. There's a couple of things that happen for us, Todd. One, there's a creative structure that can be done where the seller carries like a note and they become the bank. There's all of these different mechanisms you can do in business acquisition, which you can't really do in commercial real estate or
Right.
real estate because you guys have RESPAs and rules and guidelines. Over here, it's the wild, wild west. If we agree to this or if you want to do this, we can negotiate pretty much whatever. And a lot of the financing tools that we have over here allow for those flexibilities.
What type of financing tools are you? How do you finance a type of business like this? You get a $10 million revenue business. How do you finance a business like that?
Yeah, so I mean, so let's talk about real estate. A lot of your listeners are real estate people, right? So if you're going to buy an investment property and you're going to buy an apartment complex, you're probably going to try to go to Fannie or Freddie, right?
Yep.
You want that non-recourse, you want that ability to have and that's the best product you can have. And you're going to want CMBS if you're going to go and buy anything else. Those are what you're trying to do if you're buying in the bigger range.
Yep.
Here, you've got a couple different options. One, you've got SBA,
Yep.
and SBA has a 7A program that will allow you to go up to $5 million worth of loan amount. Okay, now you can have multiple SBA loans as long as it doesn't exceed 5 million. That's how that works. So you put 10% down. I mean, there's a lot of nice flexibility, but when you get above SBA, you're in a different box where you're either going to like a regional bank that is looking for the depository relationships. So the bank says, man, you guys are depositing, 2 million a month in cash. I'll give you financing if you deposit that with us,
Yeah. Yeah. Keep your
that's one
deposits with
way.
us. Yep.
You also have a thing called private credit, which private credit they are private equity firms that lend debt. They also want a piece of the equity. And so those private credit lenders have that same kind of non-recourse feel. Everything else you use is going to require a personal guarantee. There's not a lot of other ways around it. Private credit's going to be a little more expensive. You're not going to have all the control in the world, but you can get through without, if they want to back your team, you can get out without a bunch of personal guarantees.
Hmm.
So there's all these different mechanisms. And as you go up the food chain, private credit becomes more and more because the bigger companies, right, you've got to have some type of capital that's a little different than the traditional bank.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not just getting a loan from your regional bank on some of those bigger ones, or maybe you're getting some loan, but you need to fill in a big gap.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you take over a company, the owner isn't ready to retire, ideally, so they're still in it. And are they running the business for many years, or is it several months, or what's the ideal situation? And then when that owner finally says, "Okay, I'm retiring," because if you're going to keep this thing for 10 years, these owners don't want to stay in for 10 years, right? So if you're going to keep it for 10, 12, 15 years, whatever it might be, what what do you how are you transitioning then? Are you finding somebody in the company? Are you appointing a CEO? Are you running the business? How does that work?
So the strategy that we execute it's really under a name called an independent sponsor model. Okay, and as an independent sponsor model, we are sourcing, finding, acquiring businesses. We're then recruiting and finding operating partners, people to run the day to day. And then our goal is to try to find additional bolt-on acquisitions in that investment over time, right? So a lot of these companies that are 40, 50 years old, you're not going to come in and turn around and grow it at 30% a year. It's just, it's a pretty stable business. It's a trade-off, right? You're not buying an early growth business. You're buying kind of later stage, right? It's seen its boom. You're coming in, you're bringing in some better technology, you're bringing in some better resources, you're bringing in, any of those components around HR, accounting, from finance, sales, maybe some of these things to resurrect the business, but to just take that business, turn around and go to this massive growth, it's not likely. So where we can add the growth value is to keep that stabilized business that's been very consistent, work on the areas of the business that maybe the owner's kind of not paid attention to lately, right? Bringing some fresh eyes. Maybe it's thinking about lean thinking, right? Maybe they haven't done lean, or maybe they do everything on paper. Believe it or not, a lot of these companies are still very paper driven.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it. When you say 45 of them, 45% are owned by baby boomers. Yeah. They're probably
Yeah, you
haven't
got a lot,
adapted
and
much
they've been doing it
technology.
this way for a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's as simple as coming in and adding culture. Like they already have like operating culture, but maybe defining that culture and starting those paths. And so all these things that we do as we kind of learn the business in that first year. So the idea is we come into the business, owner continues to run the day to day for the first year. We like them to stay on for 2 years because year one, we're going to be learning. So there's not enough due diligence that we can do to really understand everything about a business in order to get it done. These sellers typically don't want us to come in and meet all their employees and go through all this process. And they're not going to work with the traditional private equities that do that because they just they don't want to go through all that. So there's a little bit of a balance play. But in that first year with the owner in, we're learning the business. We're looking for the ways to make those improvements. And then we're either going to identify somebody in the company that we've already talked to the owner about that we feel could run the business, right? Or two, we're going to hire somebody in that has that experience. And what's nice about it is that, there's a lot of people out there would love to have upside of having equity in the company,
Right.
a good bonus structure for helping us grow, and then also be a part of additional more acquisitions. And so we call those operating partners. They may not want to personally guarantee a note. Maybe they're at a later stage of their life where they're like, dude, I just don't want to take on that amount of risk. So that person comes in and then helps us build and develop a culture. And we work with that person to do that. And we've been doing that right now at our current company here in Houston. And so that first year is a lot of learning. So the reason why the owner needs to stay on for 2 years, right? The first year we're learning, someone's got to run that day to day. And then the second year, whoever we've identified, we've got to train that person. And who better than the person that created the company?
Yep. Yep. All makes sense. And that is there an incentive for the seller to actually stay on board? I gotta imagine there's some sort of incentive for that seller to stay on board, for them to continue to produce. Like there's got to be some sort of financial incentive for them to say, "Hey, yeah, I'll stay here. I'll help out."
Yeah, and here's really where it comes down to. Most of the time with us, all the time they will carry what we call seller financing.
Yeah.
So
So
they're either going to
there's their
30% of the deal. They're going to finance to us, right?
Yep.
And it's going to help us with the financing structure, our equity, all the above.
Yeah.
So that owner wants to make sure that we don't botch the deal, right? And also another thing, Todd, is just they love their companies, right? They don't want to just walk away,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is their identity. This is who they are, and they don't want us to just go, oh, goodbye, see you later.
Yeah.
Now, there are sellers like that. Those are not who we're looking for. We really want the people that are vested in their business, love their people,
Yeah.
and we can come in and help transition without feeling like under duress here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a company that a lot of these people have slaved away at for 30, 40 years or sometimes more. And the last thing they want to do is watch their baby get destroyed overnight, right? By somebody else. So,
Believe it or not,
um,
it can happen. I mean,
yeah,
you can make, and we still make mistakes. Sometimes you move a little too quick, or timing of the market, or whatever it is. It doesn't. It's not a recipe for absolute perfect success, right? These are still hard. These transitions are still hard. These acquisitions are still challenging.
yep,
The nice part is though, statistically, a business that does over 10 million in revenue, less than 1% of the businesses in the country do over 10 million in revenue,
Wow.
surprisingly.
Wow.
Okay. So out of all the companies, about 1% of them do over 10 million in revenue. Now we have a big country. We have a lot of opportunity, but finding those, right, and looking for those are what we target, because one, we have the capacity to buy them. Two, we know what to do, but also it takes you out of that risk pool of a company going out of business, right? Which the other one is that a company over 10 years in business that also does 10 million in revenue, it's a very small percentage of them. So when you look at the startup world, that first 5 years, the odds are like 85% of them fail. We've all heard it. That 15% that goes on, of that 15%, man, very few of those get to a 10 million in revenue. Very few get up above that.
Yep. Well,
So
most of
that's where,
those fail after that too. So
yeah. And it happens, right? I mean, COVID happened. I mean, all of these things happen
yeah.
that can just wipe you out. And it can happen even if you're a buyer. So you've got to have that tenacity. Again, going back to what we talked about, you got to be able to keep the ball rolling. You need to find out how to get access to capital. You got to work with your investors. And there's a lot of things we do, but man, ultimately, we believe that this investment vehicle, so people that participate and syndicate with us, we feel like we have a higher chance of success than most investments because of the de-risking of the processes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not investing in an unknown startup, in an unknown industry. You're not investing with a company who doesn't have a proven track record. You're keeping a well-established owner in place for a longer period of time. I mean, all those things add up pretty well to, again, like you said, you can always, things can always go wrong, but at least a lot less risk profile there. As far as your investors go, there's no guarantees. Okay. So let's just make sure everybody understands that there's no guarantees, and any numbers you throw out here, you're not guaranteeing anything. You're just giving us hypotheticals. But what type of returns are you aiming to achieve for the investors?
So one of the things we did as we were setting up Equity Launchpad, fortunately, my partners run a platform called Disrupt Equity, multifamily. So we have a large network of investors. What we did is we all sat down and said, hey, what would be advantageous for a real estate investor to look at this investment? What would be a fair trade? And so we looked at a lot of the private equity models. And so a traditional private equity, if you go to Carlyle, right, or you invest through your financial advisor through those, they're going to place bets over companies typically on a 7 to 10 year horizon. The investor doesn't get any front-ended cash flow. They may be accruing a preferential return, but they're not getting any cash, right?
Right.
So they're betting on the exit. Now, there's a high chance that they could exit because private equities have this game they play that they're always exiting to somebody. So, but there's a churn of that investment. What we decided was, because a lot of the people we talked to are cash flow lenders, that we wanted to pay out full or partial on the pref, just depending on the deal. So our first project we did a 15% pref that pays out on a quarterly basis, annual. We then, in there, the investor group gets a 10% ownership stake that also generates dividends, and it has exit upside. So think about 3 ways you get paid. You get paid on the pref cash flow that gets paid out. And that's as we transition the business and as we're getting things rolling, right? And the investor gets
pref, or is the goal to pay that all the time?
We're paying that out quarterly, right? So that first 6 months, we're getting into the business. We're trying not to pay it out. It's accruing, but then we start paying that pref out after that 6-month timeline.
Yeah.
So that's getting paid out quarterly. So there's cash flow.
Yep.
Now, as we're getting through those first few years, right, there's the hope that we might be able to reposition the business and pay out that pref. Right. So we get into year 5. A lot of the loan instruments here are 10-year, 5-year, and 7-year. So they're even amortized over there. So you're not getting 30-year AM on a 5-year note. You're getting a 5-year AM.
Yep.
So in year 5, or 7, you're chopping down a lot of that principal and interest in the deal. So you might be able to reposition, pay the investors out. Now, the nice part is they get their money back first, and they've gotten that pref being paid out to them for cash flow. But they still retain 10% of distribution. So for any dollar that we take as a general, or they're not really general partners, but shareholders, right? The investor gets paid first, their 10%.
Yep.
And then if we exit, So we exit in 5 or 10 years, then they get 10% of the exit upon liquidation.
Yep.
So we thought it was a relatively cool structure that we could bring to the table that provides cash flow, provides, distribution cash, and it has an exit to it. So we're targeting that 25% IRR. That's where our target is. Again, we don't really model in these huge exits, right? We're really modeling in what it's predictable, what it's been doing, and what do we think we can at a fair growth rate.
Yeah, I mean, and the 15 ref on the money is great cash flow. So even if the exit doesn't happen as quickly as what you wanted, you're still getting a really good pref with the
Sure.
potential of getting your capital back too at a be it when you can whatever refinance or redo the capital stack. So that's a cool setup. Um, Casey, through this journey, through your businesses, through this particular journey, whatever you want to focus on, but what's a mistake that you've made, and how can you teach our listeners?
It's kind of like a catch 22. My biggest mistakes is that I move too fast.
Hmm.
Um, it's the devil's in the details. What my mentor said in the commercial real estate side when I was doing financing for a while, he was like, the devil's in the details, Casey. And so my biggest challenge is that I'm a ready, fire, aim kind of guy, right? And now there's also the catch 22 where they say, hey, that's where most entrepreneurs are. I'm not the guy that's going to sit there and think about it all day. I'm going to go do. But in that doing, I make a lot of waves and challenges and stuff. So, you know, being able to still have that mentality to execute and move quick.
Yep.
But then over the years, I've gotten better at refining before I move too quick,
Yep.
right? Because I am definitely a quick start. I go quick, I start running hard at it, and then I start thinking about it. And I'd say that's been one of my bigger challenges.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, and it's easy. It's easy to get excited, right? As an entrepreneur, you got a dream, you got a vision, you're pumped up, you get excited about something, and sometimes you don't do your homework. Sometimes you don't do enough due diligence or take enough time. Like you said, you're just like you get in it and you start and you just go, and then you start to think about it. And it's like, okay, slow down. Let's think about it first. Not overthink. I think that's what you're trying to make sure you still don't do. Like you got to
Right.
make a decision, um, but slow down and make a good decision. Make the right decision.
Yeah, because when you run at something really hard and you've made your decision, and you remember that we have to have persistence and tenacity. Sometimes if you move too quick and you're tenacious on it, you're really chasing a bad. It's not you as an entrepreneur. It's just you picked the wrong horse.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of extra homework on the front end, maybe a little bit of getting a little bit of more feedback, survey your people around you, listen to what they're saying, and then move. And when you move, then move quick.
Yeah, I would probably piggyback right on that. I mean, that's probably a big thing that I have done when I look at some of the deals or things that have not gone as well is that just moved too fast and didn't and liked the opportunity too much and didn't do the homework on that
100%.
opportunity or think through it and just said let's go forward with it, right?
Get
So
excited.
get excited.
Devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Devil's in the details. I hear Sam Taylor saying that over to me every day.
That's good. um what's for you, what is the like maybe two, three big things that you do or that you see others do that creates success, allows you to move forward?
Yeah, I would say that the one of the things I've seen from most of the successful people I'm around is we're constantly learning. We've got our we've got our no matter how much we think we know, there's always something else we can learn. So reading, listening to podcasts, buying programs. I find myself, I see something I like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to read about that. I'm going to dig in and just a little bit of knowledge. So, definitely that eager need to continuously learn and get better at what we're doing in our craft.
Yeah.
The second thing is no matter what your spirituality is and what your path is, I do think that we are playing in a world of faith where we're trusting that in ourselves, trusting in something higher than us. And so having some type of practice of gratitude focused on, part of that spiritual development, because man, we play in the unknown. The idea that, oh, well, all of these things are perfect on paper, but then you've got to go and execute and have some faith on that. And no matter where you are in
Yeah.
your startup life or wherever, you got to have some communication, some part of that. And so I spend some time in meditation. It's been something I've been doing for many years. I don't spend 9 hours in it,
Yeah.
but start my day off with a good 10, 15 minutes of breathing just to recenter myself. I think about the things I'm happy for, because it's very easy to look around and go, man, my house needs this. This needs to be done. My kid need, it's like, and then all of a sudden you're like, golly, I'm just beating myself up. Like, I'm thankful for what I have. So that's a big piece, that part. And then I'd say the other thing is surrounding yourself with people that are better than you.
Hmm.
I think one of the bigger challenges I had is I'm a big personality. I've definitely always thought that, I knew the better path. And now I've got partners around me that I feel attribute and bring certain things to me that I just don't have those skill sets. And it's really nice to surround yourself with people that you can go, man, that guy is better than me at these certain things. And then trusting that, trusting the fact that, hey, you got to trust them.
That's a
That's how a
big one.
partnership works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big one. It's letting go of maybe some of your pride and trusting those people that, your partners, your people that work for you too. I mean, you put people in a position for a reason. You got to trust them and allow them to actually execute on the plan. Um, what's a favorite book that you can recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, it's one of the big one, man. This one I've been reading for a couple of years now, and I go back to it over and over again. It's called Happy Pocket Full of Money.
Hmm.
Um, and there's Audible out there, a little dry to listen to. But I really think that if you encompass all of the books I've ever read around personal development, business success, spirituality, all this stuff, this book encompasses it all. And so I read, kind of the thing he talks about is you read the whole thing through, just read the whole thing through, then go back and reread it, and then pick a chapter as you feel like you need it to read. And I'll tell you, that's what I've been doing. And I'm reading it. I was reading it this morning while I was doing my cardio, and I was like, man, like can't remember reading this chapter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah, you find some of those books that just really speak to you, and that's what I do. I just listen to them or read them, you know, quite a few times over and over. And there's a few books that I go back to on pretty much a yearly basis, and whether I read the whole thing or read a section of it, but you just they speak to you, and you go back to them, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. It resets your mind, I think, big time. Casey, last question before we wrap up. What are your three pillars of wealth creation?
Yeah, I think I touched on them there for a minute. It's like, one of them is definitely having a good, solid relationship with money. And I think that, the way we do that is first you got to listen to the programming that you've been programmed, because we all come from different households and different environments, right? And there is a record that is playing, and most of the things that we deal with in life is about money. And so I remember as a kid, my dad always told me money didn't grow on trees. And when I really started to think about reprogramming, I had to go, well, hold on. There are people with money trees. I promise you.
Yep.
I've seen them. I've met them. But I had to reprogram myself. So really having that relationship with money is important. So it's no matter
Money's
how
got some
hard you work.
paper in it anyways, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
what is
grows
what
on
is the
trees.
trade? That's it. Exactly. It's all trees.
Yeah.
But hearing what that programming is, right? And that's a big thing about it. The other thing is that I would say another part of the pillar of wealth is discipline.
Yeah.
At different times it's hard. I mean, we've got to do all of these things and do all of them right. And you're sitting there going, man, like God, like having a discipline and sticking to that plan and revisiting it and doing that. And look, I've fallen off the horse many times. I get focused in growth, and you stop looking at you're like, holy crap, I'm spending too much money. It's like, and you got to get back to your disciplines.
Yep.
And then I'd say that last little piece is faith. It's whatever whatever you need in that connection. That's a big, big connection. Is be thankful, gratitude, and really enjoying every day that we have, no matter what. And I know it sounds a little cliche, but I've really been working on that one a lot, because we find ourselves when things are going wrong, and when they're going wrong, the bigger the projects you do, the bigger the weight, right? The dips are bigger. The numbers are bigger, right? And you're gonna have them. It's a guaranteed, right? Then if you cannot like just go, man, I'm enjoying this moment because I'm being taught something, I'm learning something, right? You then find yourself going down another spiral, which is fear, doubt, worry, all these things that just are going to create more of that.
Yeah.
So it's really playing and being aware of those things.
Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, it's been powerful for me to, I pray a lot. And so just to have that in my prayer, that gratitude in my prayer, and to be able to like just thank God for the things that are happening and whatever is going on, right? And it gets you through whatever that is, those challenges. If you can be just grateful for it, and it doesn't necessarily, again, like I'm a big faith person. I believe in God, and I want everybody to, but it doesn't matter if you do or you don't. If you can get yourself in that, centered in that, just being grateful for what's going on, and to meditate. And I think it's just really gets you through some of those times that you're gonna have challenges, especially as an entrepreneur. You're just gonna have a lot of challenges that happen. So
I've been married over 20 years, and marriage is the same thing,
yeah,
man. It's everything we do is a lot of work. It's funny. I tell my son that, he's 18, he's going the military route. And I got to see him the other day. It's been about 5 weeks, and he just looked like he was getting his ass kicked, man. And he was, and he is, and I just reminded him, I was like, yeah, but you signed up for this, so try to find some joy in it. Otherwise, it's just going to eat you alive, and he kind of gave me that look like, maybe he did listen to me, Todd.
great. Yeah, I mean, it, it's not going to be the only time that he's going to get his butt kicked, right? I mean, it's going to continue to happen. Yeah.
Welcome to life.
Welcome to here's your awakening. Welcome to life. Welcome to the military. Oh man. Well, Casey, look, really appreciate you. Appreciate the time on the show. How can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more about Equity Launchpad, what you got going on?
Yeah, sure. They can give me Casey Minshew on LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn guy. Very easy to find me. There's not a lot of Casey Minshews out there, so you can find
Yep.
me. And then equity-launchpad.com. Our contact information is there. People can look at our, coming investments. They can sign up for the information about that. All of that's there on the website. And I'm really easy to get a hold of. That's always a problem. So you can email me at Casey@equity-launchpad.com, and that's CASEY. And yeah, I will absolutely respond to any questions, anything. Like to be as helpful as possible.
Yeah. And if you're a business owner listening to this and you got 10 million in revenue or greater, and you got your business has been there for 10 years and you're Texas based, give Casey a call. He might be able to help you out. So
Yeah, and even if you're not those things, I can always
yeah.
help you out,
Yeah,
point you in the
for
right
sure.
direction.
Love it. Casey, again, really appreciate you. Appreciate the
Yeah.
time, and you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience, and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it.
And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out. And we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.